I mentioned in my intro the very popular Rise Again movement, which I try to follow every hashtag when you put in every post. I try to follow it and make sure that I'm up to date because it really is so motivating. But, looking at that and looking at your YouTube videos and your posts, and one could never guess that everything you've been through, because it's just the total opposite. There's such a radiance in you that one would never expect everything that you've been through. So can you give us a little bit of that background and what you all face?
It started back in 2003 when I met my husband and we fell in love under the red rocks of Sedona, Arizona. It was classic love at first sight fairy tale.
Okay, it's already starting.
My husband is just an extraordinary human being. He is literally the most selfless, generous, kind person I've ever known. He lives to help other people. He's always anticipating others' needs. And, I felt so lucky the instant that I met him. But then our fairy tale kind of switched pretty quickly. About 2 months after we met, he injured his back doing what he was always doing, which was helping other people, helping his grandma with a home repair. And he herniated 3 discs in his spine and had 2 more bulging. So,
poor guy.
Yeah. And he was in so much pain. And we went to doctor after doctor. We tried every kind of therapy and acupuncture you could possibly imagine. But this was at the height of Purdue Pharma pushing these new miracle pills of Oxycontin and Vicodin and opiate painkillers. And they were sold to doctors, marketed to doctors as less than 1% of people get addicted. In truth, 1 in 4 people that try them will become addicted. Doesn't matter their race,
really?
class. Yeah. And a lot of times you think about if you're in an accident and before you've even woken up in the hospital, you're already addicted because they've ignored you without even your consent. Without even thinking about it. So,
wow.
Yeah, so that kind of began a slow descent into opioid addiction because he was a highly functioning addict. He was still the beautiful human being that he was and a fantastic husband. And we got married.
I love the way you talk about him.
Yeah, I'm pretty lucky. I feel like I've lived one of the greatest love stories ever, Then in 2009, the recession hit and we lost everything. We lost our home to foreclosure. I lost my job of 5 years as a television host, and then we lost a baby. And that was actually just the beginning for us. We ended up over the next 8 years losing 30 people in 8 years. That over the next few years really started to teach me how to go through the pain. I started studying tons of personal development authors, spiritual authors. Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist monk, loved his work. And all of that together helped me to start coming out of the grief. And finally, after the birth of our 3rd child, that was when I had built up enough strength in me and enough trusting myself again after all those years of gaslighting, being gaslit, and being told everything I thought was true wasn't. I finally built up the strength to confront his addiction. I knew something had taken a dark turn all of a sudden, and it was starting to get dangerous and threaten his life after 10 years now. And I'd had all kinds of failed interventions with him, and everything would always be, he was a timeshare salesman, okay? So he was on sobriety even.
Yeah, I can imagine.
He would tell me after every intervention that he was going to get better, and then slowly it would come back to what it was. And then eventually, my 3rd child was about 6 months, maybe 8 months old. And all of a sudden, I started just kind of looking for clues. I just decided it was time to face it. I saw this thing on Facebook, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. And then I was watching Oprah one morning interview Maya Angelou, and Maya Angelou said, when people show you who they are, believe them. And I realized,
the most inspirational woman, that Maya Angelou.
Right?
Seriously.
Isn't she amazing? Oh. And that was really the moment that I realized he's an addict and he's not going to change and I can't fix him. And if loving him is hurting me, then it's really not love at all.
Oh, sweetie.
So I had this really difficult night where I sat up all night at the foot of our bed and watched him breathe and not breathe and counted the seconds between his breaths. 1, 2, 3, 50, 75 seconds between breaths. And I realized he was inches away from an overdose. And then every time that he would take a breath, it would be this huge gasp of an inhale, like the defibrillators had just been put to his chest and he'd just been brought back to life. You know, it was really strange because after 10 years, when you love someone with an addiction, you end up, in a way, going crazy, trying to control them, trying to save them. And in that moment, it was actually the moment that in 12-step programs, they say you drop the rope, you know, because as long as each of you are holding on to one side, it's a tug of war. And in that moment, it was like all of a sudden I just dropped the rope and I was like, I can't fix this. All I can do now is what do I need? How do I take care of me? What do my kids need? And so I really wanted irrefutable proof of what he was doing in the bathroom 18 times a day. And I went outside and stood on my patio at 6 o'clock in the morning in Christmas pajamas in September. And I just looked up at the sky and I said, I need overwhelming evidence, please. I didn't even know who I was talking to, but I just was like,
the universe.
You know, ask for what you need. You don't get what you don't ask for. And
Neil, is that me?
Huh?
I tell Neil that all the time. Go outside and tell the universe what you want.
Exactly. You know, so it was crazy because after years of trying to figure out the truth, in that instant, as soon as I said that, all of a sudden I got this vision in my mind of walk around the outside of the house, stand on a chair and look in the little shower rectangle window.
Oh, perfect.
And I was like, why had I never thought of that? So I ran around the side of the house, barefoot in my pajamas, stood on the chair really quick. And when I looked inside the window, what I saw was enough to know that I could not be married to him anymore. And that day I kicked him out and asked him to leave. My soulmate, the love of my life, you know, even though he was an addict, he never stopped being my soulmate. It was the most difficult day of my life. But then, you know, he got angry and he went to the ATM that night and took all of our money. And a few days later, he threatened to take our kids and kidnap them while he was high. So I had to go file an order of protection against him and sit in front of a judge and ask him to protect me from the love of my life.
Oh, Meg.
Yeah. And I became a single mom overnight to 3 kids under the age of 5. And but you know what got me through was all those years that I had been bringing myself through the grief and the loss and studying personal development and meditating. I had taught myself to expect the worst, expect the best, even in the worst. And, you know, like times where you're just absolutely at rock bottom, I would let that make me dig even deeper inside and say, okay, you know what? I am going to push just as hard back at this with my belief that something better is going to come. Because if everything can change for the worse in an instant, everything can change for the better in an instant. And I'm living proof of that. So why not live your life believing it could be a miracle around every corner?
I'm taking notes. Okay.
I was filing protection orders, police reports, ransacking my house for drugs, making sure there was nothing in the house that the kids could find, and determined to divorce him. But 55 days later, I met him in court. He was contesting the order of protection so he could see his kid. A couple minutes later, I found myself sitting in front of my husband for the first time in 55 days. And I could barely look at him. It took every ounce of strength that I had to just look up into his eyes again. And the moment that I did, I knew he was my sober soulmate again. Those crystalline light blue eyes I'd fallen in love with were clear again for the first time in 10 years. And something told me there were some miracles happening that I couldn't even begin to understand in that courtroom that day. I hated him. I loved him. The question was, could I ever forgive him for everything that he'd done as an addict? And he came out of rehab so sober, so patient, so humble. He had no shame. He was just born a new person, and he felt so grateful. And he was just incredibly patient and just let me take the time I needed as we started talking again. And we kind of went back through all that stuff that we had experienced and relived it with him having sober eyes this time, because it had been so isolating for me, for him to be numbed out over there as an addict while I was trying to face everything head on and deal with it on a conscious level, you know. And that really just brought us this healing that I could never have imagined. And I'll never forget the day I asked my husband on our first date.
Oh, tell us about that.
Yeah, please.
Oh my God, please tell us about that.
One night I called him up and I said, how about after dinner tonight, we just go sit on the back patio and have a little date. And we just sat under the moonlight on the back patio. And it was like the second that I allowed myself to fall into his arms again, I knew that was my home, and it always had been. And, you know, we went to a counselor one day because it was really a back and forth tug of war inside myself, because I really was very traumatized by everything that had happened. And we went to this counselor one day, and we kind of like, you know, came to her like she was a judge, and we were each giving her our side of the story and like, what do we do? Where do we go from here? Can we make it? Can we overcome this? And she just looked at us and she said, your love is a tangible and powerful force to be reckoned with. I can feel it in this room. And then she said, she gave us a few minutes to talk. And when I looked at him and told him I was planning for divorce, he was like, that doesn't mean anything to me. I believe in what we have. And it just kind of melted me.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then there just kind of came a day where I was just like, you know what? You can choose courage or you can choose comfort, like Brene Brown says. And I have always been a person who prides myself on choosing courage. And it was
I can see that.
Love him again. Yeah. You know, they say that opioids are 100% more effective at treating emotional pain than physical.
Oh, I believe that.
So, you know, there's an epidemic in this country of not really dealing with our problems and not enough adequate mental health care that we can. A lot of people self-medicate, and a lot of people use it to numb the pain because they don't want to face it. But when you give your pain the light of your attention, there's an alchemy that happens. And on the other side of it, you discover your strength and your beauty and your compassion and your wisdom and your power, you know?
Oh my God, you are amazing. You really, truly are one of the most amazing people I've ever talked to. I mean, you've taken me on a roller coaster and I love it.
After my husband and I ended up reconciling, and we renewed our vows on the red.
And you had another baby, right?
And we had another baby.
Oh, that's so beautiful. That's so beautiful.
We named her Kama because it means love and love.
You named him what?
We named her Kama, Kama.
Oh, Kama. Oh, it's a girl. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so you have 2 girls, 2 boys? Oh,
Girls,
how cute.
Yep. At all these different points, it was me that had to save myself. I had to be my own hero. I had to be my own best friend. I had to be my own therapist, you know, until I could go get to therapy, you know. And I just decided one day, I've got to do something with all of this. And so I picked up my computer, and first I went to Corey, and I was like, my husband, and I said, honey, what we just lived was such an extraordinary story. And so many of these recovery stories don't get a happy ending like we did. And so many of the marriages don't survive like ours did. I have to tell this story. Are you okay with that? My husband, being the extraordinary human he is, was just like, go for it.
Do it.
We all have tragedy and challenges that come up in our lives. And if we can offset those by having these extraordinary moments that we create in our lives in bite-sized pieces. You know, you can make sitting at a bookstore with a cup of coffee a YOLO moment any day.
Absolutely.
You know, like,
Okay.
like put a little jazz music on and I'm good.
You're going to make me cry again. You're going to make me cry again because you were such an amazing person. You're such an amazing person. I've never met anybody like you.
I think that that's why even after all of that, I'm such a positive person, because I just feel extraordinarily grateful for every day I'm given, for every moment that I'm given. You know, I almost lost my husband. My kids almost didn't have a father. And I've lost a lot of people in this opioid epidemic, and they weren't as lucky as we were. So every day to me is a miracle. Every day that I am not lying in my bed is a miracle.
A huge favor, and come back when the book is released.
Absolutely, I will.
Because, I mean, this has really been such, I don't even know the words. Like, I mean, you just are an amazing person. And I just feel such a connection with you, you know, and what you've been through, you know. And I'm just so happy for you that you've come out on the other end of it. And now let your journey go to the moon. Because you deserve it more than anybody I think I've ever met.